Never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
Wait, what? Is that right? Is Rachel Zegler really under so much pressure and threat that she's on the run now? Whispers are growing louder that after Snow White's shocking box office flop, Disney is pointing fingers, and Rachel's name is front and center. Reports claim the studio is demanding $200 million in compensation. Let's find out what Rachel actually did and why the blame for the film's failure seems to be all on her.
What would you say to those who are just kind of overly critiquing the film at this point? You've worked so hard on it.
Rachel Zegler was recently spotted at an airport, avoiding questions and keeping her head down as she rushed past the media. Her silence and urgency only fuels speculation. Where is she headed while facing the heat for Snow White's box office disaster? With rumors swirling that Disney is demanding massive compensation, fans and critics alike are left wondering if she's escaping the spotlight or preparing for a legal storm. For now, we'll just have to wait and see what her actual plans are. Now, when Rachel Zegler agreed to play Snow White, it was supposed to be her next big fairy tale moment and a chance to stand tall as a Disney princess. She was cast as a princess, but ended up the villain in Disney's biggest disaster.
She just kind of, hand waves it like she's still some sort of victim, when in reality, she should be a movie star. She should be happy. She should be, apolitical, positive, but she's not that way. She loves Kamala Harris. She was, as woke as they are. And, the saying, go woke, get broke. And Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
From the moment her casting was announced back in June 2021, things got messy. Critics didn't waste a second slamming Disney's decision to cast a Latina actress in the role of the classic princess. What should have been a celebration turned into a target on her back. And that was just the beginning. As promotional clips dropped and comments she made about the original Snow White storyline resurfaced, more backlash followed. Social media spiraled, headlines multiplied. And to add on that, Rachel even called Snow White a woke warrior who's not going to be saved by any prince.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Anyway, things got even messier when the outspoken Zegler openly criticized the film's original source material, calling it weird and explaining that the new version would take a different approach to the classic fairy tale. During a promotional interview, she didn't hold back in her assessment of the 1937 animated classic, even taking direct shots at Disney itself. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so, she said, pointing to what she felt was an outdated romantic storyline. There's a big focus on her love story with the guy who literally stalks her.
Weird.
The backlash, even at that time, was swift and intense. In response, Zegler made an attempt to walk back her earlier remarks, calling the chance to play Snow White the honor of a lifetime just a week later. But for many, the damage had already been done.
Classic film that established the Disney name. This is such a magical night.
By the time Snow White premiered, Disney seemed to be doubling down on that narrative. At the very least, it was putting a conspicuous distance between itself and its star. The Snow White premiere was scaled down to an afternoon event that was closed to the press. People reported that a source with a knowledge of the situation said this was standard practice for Disney's family films, though Moana 2 was given a traditional premiere party just a few months earlier. Unnamed sources speculated that Disney was unhappy with Zegler specifically. The reality is, Rachel Zegler should not be playing Snow White. One anonymous source from another studio told Vulture ahead of the premiere. Zegler and Snow White's difficulties increased when the film hit theaters on March 21st. You must have been waiting for Snow White just like the rest of us, hoping for that classic Disney magic, maybe some childhood nostalgia mixed with a fresh twist. But what we got felt far from a fairy tale. I mean, the way she was roasting the iconic Snow White made it clear from the start. Check out her hilarious overacting caught by one fan.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story, just because like we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, babe.
Anyway, the movie barely got out of the gate, pulling in just $43 million domestically in its opening weekend. For a film that reportedly cost over $350 million to make and market, especially when you compare it to other Disney remakes like Aladdin or The Lion King, which opened to over $100 million. Even Dumbo, which didn't exactly set the world on fire, outperformed it. And if you felt disappointed, you weren't alone. Critics were equally underwhelmed. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a dismal 42%, and the reviews were brutal.
Disney's Snow White currently sits at a 1.7 out of 10 on IMDb. That is the lowest score of any of the Disney remakes.
While some praised Rachel Zegler's performance, others didn't hold back. Slate called Gal Gadot's acting absolutely abhorrent, and The Guardian described the entire remake as toe-curlingly terrible. After the flop of Snow White, word quickly began to spread that Disney is reportedly demanding $200 million in compensation from Rachel Zegler. The rumor caught fire online, leaving many stunned by the idea that the studio might hold its lead actress financially accountable for the film's failure. Rachel Zegler released a short video on Instagram that left fans concerned. In the clip, she appeared noticeably sad and stressed, her usual vibrant energy replaced with a quiet, reflective tone. Though she didn't go into detail, her body language and expressions seemed to confirm what many had already suspected. Something serious was going on behind the scenes.
Everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
You can see it in the way she's talking, her eyes avoiding the camera. It almost feels like she's on the verge of tears, holding everything in just to get through the message. There's a heaviness in her tone, the kind that only shows up when someone is nearing a breaking point. Whether Disney is fair in demanding compensation or not is a debate for another day. But let's be honest, most of you are more curious about why this movie failed so hard. So, what exactly happened? Well, it's not as simple as pointing fingers at one thing. The truth is, a mix of factors all came together like a perfect storm to drag Snow White down.
About Snow White, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys watch the movie? No, of course not.
It's not for me. I don't rage watch movies. Like everyone's like, Jeff, I can't wait to hear your opinion on Barbie. I'm like, I know it's not for me. I'm not Ben Shapiro. I'm not going to do a 2-hour episode about how I watched a movie I knew I'd hate.
Firstly, we all know how much things have changed in how we watch movies. Gone are the days when everyone would rush to theaters just because a film was coming out. Now, with streaming services, we can watch almost anything at home whenever we want. So, if a movie doesn't have that must-see feel, it's hard to get people to leave their couches. And let's be real, Snow White didn't exactly scream blockbuster. The buzz around it was pretty quiet, and the lack of a solid marketing campaign made it easy for people to just forget about it. On top of that, Disney's remake machine seems to be running on empty. Remember how The Lion King and Aladdin crushed it at the box office? Well, that magic has faded, and Snow White just didn't bring anything new or exciting to the table.
This is Snow White, the
You're
premiere.
supposed to be promoting Snow White, who's the fairest of them all.
Yeah.
The point of Snow White was that she transcends all these things. Her purity is what makes everything good in the movie.
The movie tried to cash in on nostalgia, but the world doesn't need another Snow White remake. Add in the controversies around casting choices and representation, and it's no surprise audiences weren't feeling it. When people feel like a movie is just a rehash of something they've already seen, they're not exactly lining up to pay for it. When the storm hit, it hit Rachel hard. Just as people started blaming her for the movie's downfall, Jonah Platt, son of Snow White's producer Mark Platt, took to Instagram and labeled her behavior narcissism. He went all in, calling her out for dragging politics into a press tour and hurting the film's chances, accusing her of being selfish and immature. His words echoed loud. She had hijacked the spotlight, risked the success of thousands of workers, and had to be reprimanded like a child. Harsh? Maybe, but that's how deep the backlash went. But even with all the noise, Rachel wasn't completely abandoned. Melissa Barrera, who had gone through something similar, reposted screenshots and made her stance clear. She shared a statement that read, "A newly published hit piece in Variety magazine attempts to paint Rachel Zegler as difficult and political radical. It doesn't. It makes her look cool as hell and full of integrity." Then, more than 50 film journalists fired back with an open letter saying, "Blaming a box office failure on a young actor's messages of solidarity with Palestine is particularly objectionable." So, while it may seem like everyone turned their back on her, there are still voices rising in support. Anyway, no matter what the real reason behind the flop was, but right now, the spotlight is fully on Rachel Zegler. Fair or not, she's the one carrying the weight of this disaster.
Crying on that stage.
When am I not crying in public? It's so upsetting.
Maybe that's exactly why she's making moves in silence. With rumors swirling about Disney demanding a massive $200 million compensation, it's hard to imagine she even has that kind of money to repay. After being spotted at the airport, avoiding the media, and looking visibly shaken, some are starting to wonder, is she actually fleeing to another country? Maybe going back to where it all started, just to breathe, or maybe to escape what's coming? For now, there are no confirmations from any authentic sources that Rachel Zegler has fled the country, but with each passing day, the situation seems to be tightening around her, pushing her to consider some drastic decisions. We're all thinking the same thing right now. What's next for Rachel Zegler? After a high-profile flop and all the controversies piling up, it's hard not to wonder how this is going to impact her entire career. Her image has taken a hit, and so has the trust of some major studios. So rebuilding won't just be about landing another role, it'll be about changing the narrative entirely. She might take a break from the spotlight to reset, or possibly lean into roles that show her range outside of the Disney image. Indie films, theater, or even streaming series could offer her a fresh start without the intense pressure of blockbuster expectations. There's also the option of reintroducing herself through music or activism, where she's already built a voice. Whatever direction she chooses, it has to be intentional, because this moment is either a pause or a pivot, and her next step will say it all. Have you watched Snow White yet? Do you think it truly flopped on its own? Or is Rachel being targeted for something bigger? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we're all ears.